She blocked my driveway again. It was the third time that week. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee going cold in my hand, watching this woman in her gleaming white Lexus deliberately slide in right behind my car, boxing me into my own property. Her door slammed like a gunshot. Designer heels clicked past my front door as if she owned the entire street. I was already running late for court. As an elected official, showing up late chips away at your credibility. I stepped outside. "Excuse me," I said, "you're blocking my driveway." She didn't even glance up from her clipboard. "Community compliance inspection." "You'll wait. I have to get to work. Maybe consider more appropriate transportation for this neighborhood." I felt the familiar burn of someone who believes a title printed on cardstock gives them power over other people's lives. But she had chosen the wrong neighbor to test. In 30 minutes, her precious Lexus would be hooked to a county tow truck on my direct orders. When she finally realized who I was, the look on her face was worth every frustrating second that came before it. My name is Denver Brennan. I've been the elected sheriff of this North Carolina county for 8 years, with 18 years total in law enforcement. A lot of my work has been undercover or community-focused, so I don't always walk around in uniform. 8 months earlier, my personal life had imploded. Messy divorce. Lost a family home. Suddenly, I was a 47-year-old man starting over in a modest HOA neighborhood, so my 16-year-old son Tyler could stay in the same school district. Tyler's been through enough. Changing schools on top of everything else wasn't an option. Those every other weekend visits are sacred to me. After the divorce and losing the house, those 48 hours are when we rebuild what got broken. The last thing I wanted was neighborhood drama poisoning the one relationship that still mattered. I've always tried to keep a low profile in my personal life. People don't need to know exactly where the sheriff lives or what his daily routine looks like. Most neighbors have normal 9-to-5 jobs, so they don't notice when I come and go at odd hours for emergency calls or court. The street is quiet, lawns manicured, people keep to themselves. After dealing with county-wide crime and politics all day, that privacy was exactly what I needed. Until it wasn't. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was rushing out for important court testimony in a case built on months of investigative work. Coffee in one hand, badge and weapon secured, I headed to my unmarked county sedan. Then I saw it, the white Lexus parked squarely behind my car, completely sealing the driveway. No flat tire, no flashers, no note. Just an expensive SUV positioned to trap me. I walked to the house the car was registered to and knocked. After a minute, the door opened. She stepped out in designer workout clothes, clipboard in hand like she was conducting an official audit. "Excuse me," I said, staying calm and professional. "Your car is blocking my driveway. I need to get to court." She looked me up and down with the expression of someone who had already decided I didn't belong. "Oh, you must be the new resident. I am Stéphanie Caldwell. I volunteer with the Community Compliance Committee." Her tone carried that particular edge I've heard before. The sound of someone who's lost control in bigger parts of life and now needs to control the small ones. I later learned she was 6 months into her own messy divorce, fighting to keep the house she inherited from her parents. This neighborhood wasn't just her home, it was her last anchor. "I appreciate the work you do for the community," I told her, "but I really need to get to court. Could you move your car?" She tapped the clipboard against her hip and gave a fake smile. "Of course. But first, could I see some proof of residency? We need to be careful about the kind of people we attract to this community." Those 4 words, "the kind of people," landed differently when you're the county's top elected law enforcement officer and suddenly you're being treated like an outsider on your own street. I showed her my lease. She sighed dramatically, as though I had inconvenienced her, and finally moved the Lexus. As I pulled out 15 minutes late, she called after me. "We'll need to discuss appropriate parking guidelines for your vehicle." I should have known then that she was going to be trouble. The next morning, I found a crisp white notice tucked under my wiper blade. Dew had made the paper slightly damp. It read, "Unidentified vehicles create security concerns. Please display proper resident parking permit and ensure your vehicle meets neighborhood aesthetic standards. Questions. Contact Stephanie Caldwell, Community Compliance Volunteer. 18 years putting criminals behind bars and now I was getting parking citations from a volunteer with too much free time. That evening, I pulled up the official HOA bylaws and read every page. Nothing about resident parking permits. Nothing about vehicle aesthetics. Nothing that gave any individual the authority to issue notices or enforce imaginary rules. So the next morning, I walked to her door for what I hoped would be a reasonable conversation. She answered still in workout gear, same clipboard. Stepania. I want to talk about the notice on my car. I read the bylaws and couldn't find any mention of permits or vehicle standards. She immediately pulled out her phone and started recording. I'm documenting this interaction, she announced loudly. This individual is questioning legitimate community safety measures and displaying aggressive behavior. Aggressive behavior. I was standing on her doorstep, speaking in the same calm tone I used to de-escalate domestic calls. Ma'am, I said to the camera, I'm not being aggressive. I'm simply asking about the legal basis for the notice. I've already contacted the appropriate authorities about the suspicious activity around your residence, she replied. If you continue to harass me, I'll be forced to file a formal complaint. Here was the first twist I didn't see coming. She genuinely didn't recognize me as law enforcement. In her mind, I was just some sketchy guy in a dark sedan who didn't fit her idea of the neighborhood. My civilian clothes, unmarked car, irregular hours. She had decided I was up to no good. What she didn't know was that the appropriate authorities she kept calling were my own colleagues, and this suspicious activity was me going about my normal routine as sheriff. As I walked home, I noticed Mrs. Peterson 2 doors down quickly close her curtains. The mail carrier gave me a strange look. Even the teenagers at the bus stop avoided eye contact. That was when it sank in. Stephanie hadn't just been harassing me. She had been building a narrative that I was a security threat, and people were starting to believe it. The following Tuesday, she escalated. I woke up for a crucial county commissioner meeting, budget decisions that directly affect every deputy under my command. I stepped outside and found not only her Lexus, but her teenage daughter's Honda Civic parked beside it. A complete blockade. I checked my watch. The meeting started in 45 minutes. It was a 30-minute drive on a good day. County business was now being disrupted by a neighbor with a clipboard. 3 hours later, they finally moved the cars. I missed the entire discussion on department funding and had to get briefed over the phone while standing in my own driveway. That evening, I started documenting everything the way any cop would. Timestamps, photos, license plates. While digging, I discovered something worse than the parking games. She had been systematically isolating us socially. She convinced the Petersons my schedule suggested criminal activity. She told the Garcias that men in that type of vehicle are usually involved in drugs. She had created a whisper campaign to turn the neighborhood against my son and me. Tyler noticed it first during his weekend visit. Dad, why won't kids come over anymore? Jenny's mom said she can't play here. That hit harder than anything. This wasn't just about parking anymore. She was destroying my family's place in the community. I learned that most HOA volunteers have zero legal authority. They can't write tickets, tow cars, or issue enforceable fines. Blocking a driveway, however, is a crime in most places, restricting access to private property, towable under local ordinance. The irony was thick. The county sheriff was being criminally harassed by someone who had no idea she was committing a crime against the county's top law enforcement officer. She wasn't even an official HOA board member. She was a self-appointed compliance volunteer who walked around looking for things to complain about. But she had built a coalition. Neighbors were now logging my comings and goings. Teenagers were taking pictures of my visitors. My own street had turned into an unwitting surveillance network. Then came the bright yellow flyers on every mailbox. Emergency Safety Committee meeting. Topic: unknown vehicles and suspicious activity. My county-issued sedan was now an unknown vehicle. The flyer encouraged people to bring photos and observations. Organized by Stephanie Caldwell. I walked past the community center that night. Through the windows, I saw 15 neighbors in folding chairs while she stood at the front with a presentation board. I caught phrases like pattern of suspicious behavior and unknown male, dark sedan. She had photos of my car at different times, notes on my schedule, even sketches of my routine. This wasn't concern. It was stocking with office supplies. The next morning, my chief deputy called. "Sheriff, we got another call about suspicious activity at your address." Same complainant as the last 6 times. 6 times in 3 weeks. I pulled the incident reports. She had escalated every week, from unfamiliar vehicle to possible drug-related activity based on visitor patterns. My son visiting every other weekend and my chief deputy stopping by for work discussions had become suspicious visitor patterns. Filing false police reports is a Class 1 misdemeanor in North Carolina, up to 120 days in jail and a $1,000 fine per incident. She didn't know it, but she had been accusing the sheriff of running drugs while I spent my days dismantling actual trafficking networks. That weekend, Tyler asked the question that broke me. "Dad, are we the bad guys? Is that why people don't like us here?" I realized this had gone far beyond petty neighbor nonsense. She was damaging my son's sense of self-worth, making him question whether his family belonged anywhere. Monday morning, my chief deputy brought a folder to my desk. The address being reported was mine. Photos of me checking mail, loading groceries, coming home, all taken from distance, framed to look covert. She had filed written reports twice, submitted a petition signed by 4 neighbors requesting increased patrols around my house, and even contacted county administration asking for background checks on residents with suspicious vehicles. She had come dangerously close to triggering a state-level corruption investigation against me, an elected official in an election year. If one detective hadn't recognized my address during a routine review, I could have been suspended, my reputation ruined, my pension and Tyler's college fund at risk. That was the moment I stopped trying to be the reasonable neighbor. I became Sheriff Brennan with the full weight of the office behind me. I pre-authorized a tow truck on standby. I reviewed every false report and built a case file showing deliberate escalation. I briefed my team. Handle this exactly like any other false reporting and harassment case. Document everything. Follow protocol. But remember who the target is. The final escalation came on a Friday evening. Tyler was visiting. We had ordered pizza for a normal father-son night. The delivery driver called. He couldn't reach the house because someone had blocked the driveway with protest signs. I looked out. Stephanie's Lexus was there again, but this time she was standing beside it, live streaming to her phone. "This is day 63 of monitoring suspicious behavior," she announced to her audience. Despite multiple reports to authorities, no action has been taken against this obvious security threat. She filmed the confused teenage delivery driver and declared the pizza might be part of a drug transaction. My 16-year-old son watched a woman publicly accuse his father, the county sheriff, of dealing drugs on a live stream. That was my breaking point. The next morning, Saturday, I put on the full dress uniform for the first time in months. Badge shining, duty belt weighted just right. At 7:25, she parked behind my car again. This time she had 2 other women with her and the live stream rolling as her special investigation finale. I keyed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Brennan, responding to harassment and false reporting at my residence. Requesting county tow truck for vehicle illegally blocking the sheriff's driveway." I stepped outside. The badge caught the sunlight. The radio crackled on my shoulder. Stephanie's face went through every stage of realization in seconds. "Oh my God," she said into the camera. He's the sheriff. The actual county sheriff." Her accomplices froze. Neighbors poured out of houses, phones up. Mrs. Peterson covered her mouth. Mr. Garcia shook his head. I walked to her window and tapped. She rolled it down, live stream still running. "Ma'am, I'm County Sheriff Denver Brennan. I need you to exit the vehicle immediately. You're parked illegally on private property, and we need to discuss your systematic filing of false police reports against a county elected official." She stepped out slowly, phone trembling. The tow truck arrived, lights flashing. The driver hooked up the Lexus with practiced efficiency. "Over the past 8 weeks," I said, holding the folder of reports, "you filed multiple false police reports describing my normal activities as drug dealing, burglary, and organized crime. You wasted significant county resources and attempted to damage the reputation of an elected official." I looked straight into her live stream camera. Congratulations. You just broadcast yourself committing 6 felonies against your county sheriff. Your 2-month harassment campaign just became evidence in a criminal case. I wrote the citations methodically. 6 counts of false reporting, 1 for systematic harassment, 1 for illegal parking. The false reports would be handled by the district attorney as interference with county law enforcement. As the Lexus was lifted onto the truck, I addressed the gathered neighbors. For anyone concerned about suspicious activity here, I'm Sheriff Denver Brennan. I live here with my son, Tyler. If you have legitimate concerns, my office number is public record. What you don't do is file false reports and harass your neighbors based on assumptions. Within an hour, neighbors started knocking on my door, not just to apologize, but to properly meet the sheriff and his family. Mrs. Peterson brought cookies. Mr. Garcia offered to help Tyler set up a basketball hoop. The HOA held an emergency meeting and passed new rules prohibiting unofficial investigations or fake authority claims. Stephanie accepted a plea deal, 18 months probation, 200 hours community service with a Sheriff's Department outreach program, full restitution of $2,340, and a 2-year restraining order with enhanced penalties for any violation. For months later, her house went up for sale. Everyone knew why. Tyler changed the most. After seeing me handle the situation in uniform, he started wearing sheriff's son shirts to school with pride instead of shame. Neighborhood kids who had been told to stay away now competed to hang out with him. Our driveway became the gathering spot. 6 months later, I organized the first Know Your Neighbor event as official county business. Over 60 families came. The street now has the lowest crime rate in the county. Property values rose because buyers see it as the neighborhood where the sheriff lives. What started as a personal nightmare turned into stronger community trust, better policing programs, and a son who's proud of what his dad does. Sometimes people only respect real authority when it finally shows up in uniform. And sometimes the loudest clipboard in the neighborhood learns the hard way that imaginary power has a very short shelf life when it runs into the real thing.